Okay, welcome back to day 2 of the solar installation here in northwest London. Before we start, just a reminder, I'm not an expert in any of the things I'm talking about. If you're considering getting solar, please make sure that you seek professional qualified advice before you do anything. Right, let's get into it. So here's a reminder of what the installers accomplished yesterday. They got all of the panels up on the front roof and they got the bird mesh set up around it. So basically the front of the house is ready to go, barring kind of any problems when they fire everything up. So I took a few photos as they were doing their work during the course of the day. So here's a photograph taken from one of the skylights that we've got at the back of the house, looking down on the roof. So the installers have so far got the rails fitted on the back, which they had started on yesterday, and you can see that they've already positioned the microinverters on these rails, so basically it's ready to have the panels installed. Here are the panels stacked up on the scaffolding, ready to be put in place. And then I took some photos after they were finished. So here are all the panels on the back roof. We've got 9 panels in total, and you can see they've already fitted the bird mesh nicely around it, so it's looking pretty good. Those kind of fingerprints and things that you see on the panels, I think they'll just wash off when it rains, so it's not really a big deal. Just due to the shape of our roof, it's a shame that we missed out on some of that space you see there in this picture, but we are literally a few inches short from being able to squeeze in another panel. So coming back to one of my earlier videos, this is where it would have been really useful to have triangular shaped panels and half-size panels to be able to use up this space. Looking more closely at the bird mesh, this is what it is. So it's literally just a wire mesh that they fit around the side and just put some screws in to hold it in place. The rails that the panels sit on are kind of cut down to length after they've fitted the panel. So here's a photo of the right hand side of this rear roof, kind of next to our neighbour's dormer. And initially the installers had cut they'd cut the rails kind of all sorts of different sizes, and it didn't really look very nice. So I had a chat with the installers and asked them to tidy it up and just get the rails to be cut down to the same size and as short as possible, because there's really no reason for them to be sticking out of the side. As you can see in this picture, they've left roughly a 1 foot gap from the centre line. Not really a big deal because the neighbour's dormer casts a shadow on those top 2 panels anyway, so installing the panels closer up to the centre line wouldn't really have accomplished much. But on the bottom panel it would have helped, but again there's some strange regulations where they have to leave the space, and it doesn't really make any sense to me, especially when you can squeeze in an extra panel in our case. Here's another angle of the rear roof just from the other kind of side, on the far left. So we've got 4 panels on the bottom row, 3 on the middle row and 2 on the top row. And like I said, if they were able to move this entire array to the right hand side by 1 foot right up to our centre line with our neighbour's roof, then we may well have just got 1 extra panel onto that middle row and got 4 on the bottom row, 4 on the middle row and then 2 on the top row. The installers did say that if they mounted the panels vertically instead of horizontally, then they could have actually squeezed an extra panel in between the skylights that we've got on the roof, but it would have looked a bit piecemeal, so we said not to do that. Here's a super close up of the bird mesh around the panels on the back roof. So again you can see it's just a wire mesh, there's nothing special about it. It would have been good if this was black in colour, and all they do is put a few screws and bolts through it into the frame of the panel to keep it in place. Like I said on the other angle, I don't see why they cut the rail longer so that they then have to have it poking out of the mesh. I think there's no reason for this, and it's just laziness, that they could have cut the panel, measured and then cut the rail down to size as they were installing the panel, but instead they've chosen to put the panel in place and then cut the rail down, and therefore they can't get right up tight and neat because their machine is probably going to damage the panel if they go any closer. Here's another angle of the bird mesh from the skylight looking down towards our garden, and you can see that they've done a pretty neat job at installing the mesh. And finally, here's a view from the ground looking back up at the rear of the house. So it's a bit difficult to see the panels because all the scaffolding is in the way, but the key thing is that it's, you know, nice gloss black finish, and it kind of blends in with the roof. You know, it's not kind of obvious that you've got panels there. It looks kind of smart. So I'm sure once all the scaffolding comes down, it's going to look really good, and I'll take some pictures and videos of it then. But in terms of the exterior work from the roofer, that's pretty much how it goes. It's all the same as it was on the front, and this is what it looks like on the back. The guy, there's only one roofer which came along today, and the guy did it pretty quick. He had all the rails installed and he had all the panels fitted on there, and he was pretty much done with the roof work by about lunchtime. After that, he went inside to help the electrician do the final bits and pieces, and really the time-consuming portion there was commissioning the system. So the electrician got his final bits and pieces done pretty quick, but firing it all up and testing it and verifying it took them quite some time just to make sure everything's correct. So moving to the inside of the property, this is the work that the electrician's done today. There's three things. One is work in our fuse box or our distribution board in the cupboard under the stairs. And the next piece is finishing off the work he was doing in the loft with all the equipment and the inverters and whatever up there. And then obviously doing some cable running down the side of the house to provide that wired connection between the loft gadgetry and the incoming supply down over here. So looking more closely at our understairs cupboard and what's going on here. So on the bottom of the picture at the very left, the thick black pipe with the greeny yellow wire wrapped around it, that is our incoming electricity supply from the grid. Then the kind of white grey device immediately above it, connected to it, is the main cutout fuse. You then have the meter tails going to the meter, which is directly above it, so it's on the kind of left-hand wall. And as we look at this photo, we're looking at the side of it, you can just about make out the screen there. So that's our smart electricity meter. From there, what you can't really see very well is there is a Henley block. So out of the meter comes some tails and it goes into the Henley block. That Henley block then splits the incoming supply and sends one cable off to our main distribution board. So that's the one with the flap down at the moment with the yellow danger sticker on it. Then we've got the second sub-distribution board that we've installed, which is a small one at the top with the cover off at the moment. And just for completeness, the third big grey device you see on the back wall below the main distribution board is another sub-distribution board, because we have a power supply going into our garden, so that's an individual isolator for that. You know, this stuff was all kind of put in at different times, so it's a little bit piecemeal, but this is what it is. In hindsight, we should have had a much bigger distribution board installed when it was replaced, but I wasn't here when that was done, and the electrician did not leave enough spare fuses on there. So we kind of decided it's easier and simpler to install a second distribution board, the small one at the top of the picture, rather than removing this new distribution board they've just put on and replacing it with a bigger one, because then you're talking about completely rewiring the whole house, and this is an old house and the wiring is a bit of a nightmare, so we didn't want to really open that can of worms up. So looking more closely at what's going on, so from the hole in the floor at the very back you see a number of black cables coming up. So the one on the right hand side, the wiggly one, that's the one which is providing power to our garden, so that's got nothing to do with this job. Then you see a number of cables coming out, which are kind of, you know, the black armoured cables lying on the floor. Those are the two cables that we had run by some of the groundwork men a couple of months ago in preparation for getting the EV chargers installed. So those cables run under the floor and come out by the front of our house where the EV chargers are going to be. So these armoured cables are ready in place for whenever those chargers turn up, and then the electrician can just connect them up. There's ample spare cable there, but that's how electricians like to work. So when they install it all, they'll cut it down to size. Then from the same hole at the back of the floor, you see some cables coming up. So the first one on the very left, a thick black cable, which goes into the sub fuse board at the very top in the left-hand port at the bottom, that's just providing power to a third sub fuse box that we have in our extension. And then the other cables which are coming up, going into that sub fuse box at the top in the two middle ports on the bottom side, those are the cables that the electrician has installed in relation to the solar installation. So one of those cables is the power in relation to the solar panels. The other one of those cables is the power in relation to the Give Energy battery and inverter. And then it's a bit hard to see, but there are the kind of black and white and the blue and white cable, the thinner ones. Those are the CT clamps. One for the Give Energy system, the other one for the Enphase system. But in short, that's basically what's going on. So looking at the fuse box, which is open at the top, so the electrician, I mean, he's done it, but I wouldn't say he's done the neatest of jobs, in my opinion. So looking at that fuse box, on the far right-hand side, you've got the main cutout fuse, the two red fuses. Then the next one along after that is the fuse which provides power to our third distribution box in the extension. And then in the middle, you've got two grey fuses. So this is what the electrician has installed for the solar. So like I say, one's for the battery and inverter, the other one's for the Enphase system. Then we have two spare fuses at the moment, and those are left spare on purpose for when the EV chargers are connected up. And finally, on the far left, they've installed this EM115 meter. So I haven't quite figured out what this thing does, but there's a blue button on it which you can press, and it cycles through how much you're importing, exporting, whatever. So as I kind of understand how that works, I'll talk about that in a future video. So that's basically what's going on here. This sub fuse box will be full again once the EV chargers are installed. But in a nutshell, that's pretty much it. Now what the electrician did is bring some fuses which are not actually made from the same brand as the fuse box that we've got installed here. So our previous electrician who installed the new distribution board installed this Contactum brand. Looks quite good, nice and neat and tidy, and it's made of metal, not plastic. So when the solar guys first came to do a survey and they said they were going to install a new fuse box, I said, look, I don't want you guys coming with any old random brand in it. You're going to put it on the wall and it's going to be piecemeal, and there's all these dials and different, kind of things going on which don't match up. So I decided to go and get the Contactum board, and I asked them how many spare fuses they're going to need for the solar installation, and then I got this installed with enough to accommodate our need to connect it up to the next door extension, knowing that the EV chargers are coming, and then leaving enough spare fuses. Now, unfortunately, the surveyors from the company we chose, despite asking them some very clear questions, they didn't seem to have any clear answers about how many fuses this whole installation actually needs. So when I asked them on the phone, they said, oh, let me go and check with my electrician, and they came back saying they need 2. Well, in hindsight, they've used up three slots. So it's not a problem, because we still have 2 spare ways, but once again, that means our entire system is full. Not that we're expecting to add anything more to this, but you never know, if there is something that pops up, we're not left with any spare fuses. So anyway, as the previous electrician who put this all in place was doing his work, he discovered that there is actually 1 spare fuse left in the main distribution board. It had been labelled up to say there's something there, but when he opened the covers and looked closely, there's nothing actually connected up to it. So the wiring diagram the very first electrician who installed that did was incorrect. But that's basically the gist of what's going on here. So this is what it looks like with all the covers back on. So as I said before, the electrician used a brand of fuse which is different from the provider of the distribution board that I had already chosen to make it match up. So although in the previous photo it all looked like it fitted together, when he tried to put the covers back on, it didn't fit. It was just like 1 or 2 millimeters too big, and this cover wouldn't go back on. So he had to go off and buy some replacement fuses which were made of the same brand as our board, and then he swapped them out and put them in, and now he was able to get the cover on. So again, looking at that sub-fuse board on the far right, you've got the main cutout switch. The next one is the power to our third distribution board in our extension. The next two are the supply for the solar and the battery. And then you've got two blank fuses, and on the far left you've got this EM115 meter. Finally, looking in the loft again, so it's pretty much the same as yesterday. All the electrician has done is kind of connect everything up, switch it on, tidy up a bit and take away some kind of plastic wrapping and things. So just for completeness, if I start on the far left, the black device is the N-phase Envoy. So this is the communication hub. All the inverters behind every panel talk to this thing, and this thing talks to the internet. The next kind of metal box is the mini fuse box. It contains the fuses for the give energy system. The next thing you've got there, that rotary dial, is the isolator for the AC energy, if I remember correctly, coming from the grid. Then you've got a small generation meter. I think, again, I need to understand this better, but I think this thing is just measuring how much energy the solar panels are producing before it gets pushed to the battery or the grid or wherever it goes. Then at the very top, you've got the great big give energy inverter, and you've got cables going in for the battery, you've got cables coming out, going off to the solar panels. The white dongle poking out the bottom is the thing which gives the inverter Wi-Fi access. And then finally on the far right hand side, you've got another rotary isolator which isolates the power generated by the solar panels. And again, at the very bottom, you've got the 8.2 kilowatt give energy battery. So this thing's huge. It weighs an absolute ton. But the electrician has installed it in such a way that it leaves a space on the left-hand side for a second battery if we wanted to put one there. But this is pretty much all there is in the loft. So both in the fuse cupboard and here in the loft, there's not actually much to see or much to do now that the electrician has finished all of his work. All the information and everything there is to see about this system is all monitored via the app. On the give energy inverter that you see here, it does have some lights. So it has a light kind of trying to indicate if power is going to and from the battery, if power is going to and from the grid, and if power is coming from solar panels. And they all kind of point to a circle in the middle, which I believe is kind of the brain trying to figure out which way to push all this power. But that's pretty much it. The give energy battery has a few lights on it, which there's 4 lights just representing how full the battery is. So as it gets charged up, those lights will illuminate and then come back down. There's a button on the far right on the side of the give energy battery on the right hand side to turn it on and off. But that's it. There's no other buttons or displays or any other information to see here. The kind of white ducting that you see going across the middle, basically all the cables are tucked away in there. This is kind of what the electricians do to hide all the kind of messy wiring. They feed it all through that conduit to make it look a bit tighter. On the far right hand side, they haven't kind of covered it up because the CT clamps are so big that they poke out of the ducting. So he's cut the cover of the ducting short a little bit and just left them poking out. It honestly doesn't bother us because this is the eaves of our loft space, and all we do in here is we kind of store junk basically. So no one's even going to see this or notice it. But this is pretty much all there is in the loft and everything to see. So next I'll go on to showing you a quick photo of some of the exterior work. So the electrician ran the cables which need to go down to our fuse box along our loft space. So you can see them lying there or tacked to the wall just to the left of the battery at the bottom. You can see a few black cables going along. They run along the floor like that, tacked to the wall all the way to the opposite side of our loft where it reaches the external wall, and then he's made a hole in the soffit and the cabling goes down the external wall, and then at the very bottom of the wall it reaches this this kind of junction box, and really all this is a hole in the wall which is connected to some ducting that we had installed under the floor, and it allows the electrician to push his cables through that ducting, and that's where they popped up into the understairs cupboard where the distribution boards were, and they popped out of that hole that we had in the floor. So there's nothing really exciting to show here except the 3 cables that you see in this picture. The left-hand 2 were installed by the solar electrician, so he's put a nice gland on it to make the finish really good. The right-hand one was done by a different electrician where he was connecting our supplies together. So, I mean, he should have put a gland on it just to make it look nice, but technically you don't need one because inside this box you're not making any connections with the cable. It's still an armoured cable which is running into the ground. So there was no need for any glands or anything. The only reason we've put the box there is to try and make this look a little bit neater, because you can't really bend armoured cables at 90 degrees. It's extremely difficult. So we put a junction box here just to kind of cover up all the wires going into this hole and make it look a little bit tidier. But that's it. There's nothing else to show you on the external portion of the house in relation to the electrician's work. He's just got wires tacked up the wall going into the loft, and that's it. So to commission the system, the installers took care of everything, so they didn't reveal too much information to me, but there was basically 2 portions to the equation. So first of all, if I talk about Enphase, each of the microinverters has a serial number, and there's a sticker which you can peel off as you're installing the inverter, so that you can stick it to a piece of paper or something, so behind which panel in which position you have put this specific microinverter. The reason that's important is because when they get the whole system up and running, you get a visual diagram of all the panels, and the power output each panel is generating is measured by this microinverter. So knowing which panel you have placed a specific microinverter behind is important for this to all make sense. So the installers, as they did, they kind of stuck all these sticky labels to a piece of cardboard where they had drawn out the design of our roof, front and back, and put all the serial numbers on there. So then they kind of logged into their own installer's app, took some of my personal details to register me on there, spent probably quite some time entering all these serial numbers for all these different inverters to get it all set up, and that's it. After that, it was connected to our Wi-Fi, and the first thing the system does is see if any of the inverters require a firmware upgrade. And because it's working on Wi-Fi and it's going through a roof and it's a bit of a distance away from our repeater, it probably took about an hour or so for the system to confirm to them all the microinverters have been updated to the very latest firmware edition. This is kind of normal in the commissioning process because as the manufacturers keep on figuring out improvements, they have all these firmware updates, and when they commission it, they want the whole system to be running on the very latest version of the firmware for them to then determine that everything is actually working properly. If they kept some of these pieces of equipment on the old firmware, it could be the reason why something's not working properly, because they've since figured out a bug and fixed it all. So that's pretty much all there is for Enphase. Well, as the installer was doing his thing and registered my details, I did receive a welcome email from Enphase asking me to kind of log on and just kind of set up my account, but that was pretty much it. It took a couple of days or so for the office to send me a final invite to Enphase Enlighten, which is the name of their analytics software. So once I was able to log on to that, both on the computer and on the app, then I can see all of the kind of more detailed information about my installation, the design of the solar panels I mentioned, how much each panel is generating, all the graphs and so on that I'll show you soon. But that's pretty much all there was from an Enphase point of view. From a Give Energy point of view, it was very similar. So again, they took all of my personal details. They have their own kind of installer's app where they configure everything, and they got it hooked up to the Wi-Fi. And in the same way, the first thing that happened is a firmware update. So that took a bit of time. And then it seemed to take the electrician a bit longer with Give Energy to confirm that everything is working properly. So he had to do some kind of voltage tests as part of this commissioning process on different bits and pieces to make sure he's got wires plugged in the right way round and they're giving the right kind of readings. he had to make sure that the CT clamps are on the right cables and do some experiments to make sure that, again, they're reading the right thing, etc., etc. So, and then after that, what they do is they phone up Give Energy and have them on the call as they're commissioning, and Give Energy are looking at live readings of our system on their end and confirming to the electrician, yes, this is performing as expected, or it's not, or do this or do that, or run this test. So one of the experiments that they require as part of the installation is that you boil the kettle, because they know how much power the kettle should be using, and therefore all the CT clamps and everything should suddenly start reading. You're suddenly requesting a lot of power in the house. So he did that as part of the process, and Give Energy, immediately confirmed, yep, they're seeing the readings, everything's looking good. So then the first thing that Give Energy do after all the firmware updates have gone through, they ask the battery to do a full discharge. So the battery came with about 50% power, so they asked it to do a full discharge and then a full charge to max, and then the battery is kind of after that in normal working mode. So a full discharge took quite a few hours, about 4 or 5 hours or so, to kind of empty out, and then it spent the night, or a portion of the night after that, charging up to kind of max capacity, 8.2 kilowatts. And after that, it's that the commissioning process done, and the whole system should start to work. So I had access to the app, etc. This soon as this kind of piece is done and the electrician's done his work in the house, the app starts to work for me, and I can see everything that's going on. So even though the battery is doing a full discharge and charge, I can still see that it's doing that, and Give Energy and monitoring at their end to make sure it's calibrated and set up properly. So that's pretty much all there is in relation to the commissioning process. So once the installers had done that and confirmed that the installers' apps are telling them they've done everything, they basically packed the bags and took off and said everything's done. And that was the end of it. And then we were just kind of left to see, if it's generating the solar and see what happens. So that's it for this video. That's as much as there is to talk about in relation to the installation. So in the next videos now, I'll show you what I know about each of the apps and what happened next.